Throughout her hero training, Jiro had come to learn that most villains were without morals and would do anything for the chance of victory or escape. So she was used to those she tracked down and fought doing despicable actions to ensure their continued freedom, to continue preying on the innocent. But those actions normally came down to trying to kill her, so when the latest villain she and Kaminari were tasked in taking down threatened to destroy an entire hospital and kill every patient and member of staff instead, she was shocked to the point of being frozen on the spot along with Kaminari, knowing one wrong move could set the villain off and prompt him to act out on their threat.
I said back off!
The villain snapped as he flexed his arms. Sharp protrusions started to emerge from his muscles as he readied his shrapnel quirk. The villain able to produce sharp metallic objects from his skin at high speeds and rates, making him a literal human shrapnel bomb.
One wrong move and everyone in here gets cut to pieces!
He continued as he stood in the center of the hospital waiting room, a good 30 or so terrified civilians standing around them.
That goes to all of you! Anyone tries to run, you get shredded!
Okay, let's take this easy now, buddy. Kaminari spoke, trying to calm the villain. None of us are moving, see? Nobody's going to hurt you.
Good! You better keep it that way!
Yeah, even if I did move, I don't think I'd be able to get to you fast enough to take you out before you fired. The stun gun hero continued. But do you know what's faster than me, though? Before the villain could open his mouth again, Kaminari flexed his fingers, sending several powerful bolts of electricity at him. Each bolt easily several thousand bolts, striking the villain hard, making him seize up as he exclaimed in pain. Dinky then taking the chance to run forward and outright tackle the villain to the ground, letting out more torrents of electricity to keep the villain subdued, and hopefully make him lose consciousness. As the villain spasmed and thrashed, however, he violently splayed his arms out, slamming his forearms to the floor before expelling his quirk, sending dozens of razor-sharp metal pieces straight into the floor, thankfully with enough force that they cut through the tiles and got stuck rather than ricocheting off and harming anyone else before screaming finally stopped, as he passed out. Staring in shock at what happened, Jiro finally snapped out of it to approach her partner and the defeated villain.
Oh my god, Denki!
She gasped as Kaminari picked himself up. Did I win? He asked, a little woozy from the sheer charge he had expelled, leaving his brain half-fried, but not completely, which allowed him to form full sentences.
You could have been killed, you idiot!
Jiro then snapped at him, more out of concern for what would have happened if Dinky had messed up.
What if he had fired first? Everyone would be dead!
She continued before flinching as the sound of a generator dying rang out, and the entire hospital went dark.
What's going on?
Oh my god, the power mains are under the floor. He must have cut through them. We have patients on life support.
One of the nurses screamed as panic started to set in.
The backup generators are under repair.
Oh shit, what are we gonna do?
Jiro gasped, starting to panic herself. There was no way either she or Dinky could repair a generator, and if they left to find someone, who knows how many patients on life support would die in the meantime. As Jiro started to panic, Dinky suddenly had a flash of genius. The stun gun hero rolling the villain over to get to the floor tiles under him, and hooking his fingers into the grooves that the villain's quirk had made. Dinky removed the tiles, and with a few hard pulls, he revealed the wires underneath. Now how much electricity does the hospital need? Duh, screw it, 10 million volts! He then exclaimed as he grabbed hold of the damaged wires, ripping them off from their damaged parts before slamming the intact parts together and driving 10 million volts of electricity through them, crying out in strain and discomfort as he forced his quirk to its limits. Watching in shock as her boyfriend put everything he had into the hospital's power supply, she then gasped as the light slowly flickered back on, and the steady beeping of the machinery filled the air again.
We need something to secure the wires until the backup is fixed.
She called out, to which one of the doctors ran off to a nearby utility closet, coming back with thick rubber gloves and industrial tape, binding the wires together as quickly as he could, allowing Dinky to release them and fall back, his body smoking slightly as sparks jumped off of him.
Kaminari?
Jiro gasped as she hurried to his side, fearing the worst, as she had never seen him let out that much electricity at once.
Denki!
To her immense relief, Dinky then slowly sat back up, the blonde slowly raising both hands before giving a double thumbs up. "I did it," he then drawled, his face plastered with his classic brainless expression from when he short-circuited his brain.
You idiot!
Jiro exclaimed through more joy and relief than anger as she embraced him, an action she immediately regretted, as Dinky still had a lot of electricity running through his system, and the moment she made contact with him, the heavy static ran straight through her hair frizzing and her jack shooting out straight as she was violently shocked. The hearing hero ended up just as dazed as Dinky, as her body locked up from the powerful shock, causing her to fall back, twitching slightly as the nurses and doctors scrambled to help them.
1 week later.
A couple of days later, hospitalized for the powerful shock and another few days off duty to fully recover, Jiro was relaxing back in her and Dinky's shared apartment, the hearing hero scrolling through her phone to find the right song that suited her mood, whilst twiddling one of her jacks around her finger. Finally finding the song she liked, she then took the jack and plugged it into the phone. Shock sound. Flinching at the sudden static shock that shivers up her spine, Jiro stared incredulously at her phone whilst holding her chest with her other hand, trying to slow her heart. The shock didn't feel bad. In fact, it left Jiro feeling quite tingly and almost exhilarated. Blinking a few times, Jiro unhooked her jack from the phone and stared at it for a moment before bringing it to her mouth, giving it a little lick before slowly plugging it back into the phone. Shock sound. As she was shocked again, Jiro found herself letting out a little moan, her cheeks flushing as she clamped a hand over her mouth and tossed her phone to the floor, staring at it as she tried to decipher what the she just did.
The next day.
Excusing herself to the kitchen at Bakugo's house to fetch herself a drink, as the Baku squad were hanging out at their reluctant leader's home, Jiro grabbed a glass from the cabinet before heading to the fridge, stopping as she noticed a vacant power outlet just above the counter, finding herself staring at it. Remembering the day before with her phone, Jiro subconsciously brought a jack to her mouth and gently licked it before slowly bringing it to the power outlet. If she could survive grabbing hold of Dinky after he had overloaded, then a small shock from a power outlet wouldn't be too bad, right?
What the are you doing?
Jumping at the gruff voice, Jiro turned around to find Bakugo standing in the kitchen doorway, staring at her with a raised eyebrow. She started to stutter, wondering how the she could explain herself, as Bakugo just scoffed and shook his head.
Julie's rubbing off on you. If you're gonna kill yourself, don't do it in my damn house.
The explosion hero grunted as he then went into the fridge and got himself an energy drink, before simply walking away and leaving Jiro standing frozen by herself, trying to figure out what just happened and what had come over her.
2 days later.
Jiro sighed as she washed her face in the bathroom sink. The hearing hero gazed at her own reflection, as she had finally come to realize what had been going on over the last couple of days. Getting shocked now excited her. Now came the matter of informing Dinky in a manner that wouldn't either freak him out or make him laugh his off. Luckily for Jiro, Dinky was a simple man, and she had the perfect way of breaking it to him, in a way that they would both enjoy. Stepping away from the bathroom sink, she took a moment to inspect herself in the mirror. The hearing hero, clad in just one of Dinky's old t-shirts, one that he had outgrown, and whilst it was still relatively fitting on her, it was short enough to only cover half of her. More than enough to make sure his reaction wouldn't be him laughing at her or freaking out. Taking a deep breath to ready herself, Jiro then left the bathroom, finding Dinky already in bed. The electric hero scrolling through the channels on the TV, not really noticing her entrance until she cleared her throat. "Oh, hey babe. You ready for bed? I was thinking we could watch something," he started, before trailing off as he noticed her attire, staring wide-eyed as he then promptly turned off the TV. Smirking at his expression, Jiro climbed onto the bed and pulled the covers down so that she could properly straddle her boyfriend's waist, taking the remote from his hand and tossing it aside as she slowly ground down on him, letting out a soft moan as she felt him harden through the thin material of his boxers against her bare.
Could you do a little something for me this time? There's something I'd like to try.
She asked, to which Dinky nodded. Taking her left ear jack, Jiro then gently placed the metal tip of it into Dinky's mouth, coaxing him to lightly clench his teeth around the end, making her shudder.
Could you run a little charge through it? I want to see how it feels.
She told him, blushing, as she waited to gauge his reaction. Thankfully, instead of questioning her, Dinky let out a small current run through his body and through the ear jack, the voltage being that of a large battery, so not enough to hurt her, but definitely enough for her to feel it, making her back arch with a pleasured gasp as she saw stars for a moment, her getting undeniably wet as she shuddered on his lap, unable to contain her soft noises of enjoyment. Watching in shock at Jiro's more than positive reaction, Dinky couldn't help but grin, taking the jack out of his mouth and winding it around his trigger finger, sending another small jolt through it. You know, I always wondered if you'd end up like this. There are only so many times you can lick a battery before you start to enjoy it. He beamed as Jiro suddenly took hold of his shoulders, digging her nails in as she glared at him through hooded eyes.
Shut up and turn up the voltage!
She hissed as she then moved one hand down to push his boxers down, freeing his now solid erection and guiding it to her gripping slit.
I want to see the stars!
She demanded before slamming herself down on his manhood. Oh my god. Her eyes going wide as a strong jolt shot through her system, making her clench harder than ever before. Shuddering as Dinky ran a stronger current through her, Jiro pulled her jack away from him, allowing her to grab hold of her shirt and pull it off over her head. Oh my god, throwing it aside before clutching at her lover's shoulders again for support, working her hips up and down, riding him as hard as she could, while she ran a steady current through her, making her body stiffen up every few moments and making her let out a pleasured gasp before she pushed through to keep riding him.
Oh shit! Yes! More, turn it up!
She groaned as her hips worked faster, every jolt building up her much faster than with normal sex. Her breasts bouncing harder as her body started to shake harder as Dinky upped the wattage, moving his hands up to interlock them with Jiro's, watching as she moved and admiring the almost dazed look of ecstasy on her face as her hair started to stand up on end. Squeezing her boyfriend's hands tight, Jiro suddenly leaned forward to bite down on his shoulder as her climax struck hard, her core clenching like a vice as she froze up on him, the bite making Dinky gasp and suddenly lose control of his voltage as she bit down on a weak spot, with the room suddenly lighting up and the electronics going crazy as he discharged, both with electricity and his climax, hard inside of his girlfriend, which in turn made her harder as his static charge flooded her insides, making her vision go dark for several moments. After roughly 10 seconds of blinking, Jiro's vision came back, and with a moan, she slowly sat back, her body still tingling and twitching as static ran through her muscles, letting out a soft groan as she stretched. Jiro then tittered as she then started to pat down her static-charged hair.
My god. I thought you fucked me blind.
She smirked as she ran her fingers through her hair, loving the little shocks she got from it. When Dinky didn't respond, she looked down only to find her boyfriend stuck with his discharged face, the stun gun hero giving his signature double thumbs up, letting out a small yay, prompting the hearing hero to burst out laughing, as she always did. After that night, Jiro stopped her little fascination with electrical outlets, but Every few days, she gave off an almost alarming amount of static. Thank you for watching. I'm gonna need to question my sanity, bleach my eyes, bleach my mouth,